Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. The dust is settling on France's presidential election. We're discovering who Monsieur Hollande, the French president, the new French president, is for a socialist in nearly a quarter century to win the highest office in the land. We're talking about it with New York Times bureau chief Stephen Erlinger, Patrick Vignal of the Reuters news agency, Ulrike Koltermann, the former Paris correspondent for the German news agency DPA, and Jim Shields, who teaches at Aston University. François Hollande, in his acceptance speech, throwing down the gauntlet when it comes to austerity.
I also take measure of how Europe regards us. And when the results were announced, I'm sure it was greeted with relief in many European countries. Relief and hope. Finally, the idea that austerity need no longer be viewed as an inevitability.
Patrick Vignal, there was a column today in the New York Times by Paul Krugman where he said that this is great news for the euro.
It's hard to tell at this point, but I don't think it is bad news. I think we will soon. It'll all depend on. Let's wait and see what the government looks like. But I think we'll find out. We'll see that in that government there are many market-friendly figures, and I think
he's got the center and he's got the far left to play with.
Yeah, but that's why I was mentioning the government, because we will see what kind of message he's sending out. But I think basically what we will see is a government with social democrats at importance for all the important jobs, and again market friendly figures dealing with financial matters, and probably we'll see a prime minister that is not only market friendly but also pro-European.
Ulrike Koltermann, this sounds like the government we would have had if Dominique Strauss-Kahn had been elected.
Yeah, but I think there will be, at the end, pragmatism will win. So he himself, Hollande himself, compared himself with Mitterrand, and it took Mitterrand nearly 2 years to adapt to reality. I think Hollande has a little bit less time, but this is what will happen. He is forced to change his way of talking at one point. So if it was DSK or Hollande, they are under pressure of the European partners, of the markets, and they have to adapt their strategy.
The world a different place than it was in 1981.
Absolutely, and one of Hollande's advantages in terms of the comparison with Mitterrand is, of course, that he can learn from the word go, from Mitterrand's mistakes. But going back to this analogy with Mitterrand, the world is a completely different place, a fundamentally changed place compared with 1981. So too is Europe. And the room that France has for independent policy is so much less. I mean, one of the reasons why Sarkozy has lost this election, of course, one of the many, is exactly that his presidency was overtaken by events that it was not within his reach to control. And I think that's also a reason why any change now, I mean, all the rhetoric has passed, any change now has to be what you might say incremental rather than transformational. I think the talk of transformational change isn't going to work. It has to be incremental change that Hollande embarks on.
All right, and the German chancellor telling reporters, by the way, she would welcome Hollande, quote, with open arms, but adding that for her part, the fiscal pact is non-negotiable.
It's a basic approach in Europe that we don't change everything after elections that we've already decided upon, whether in a big or small country. If that was the case, then we could not work in Europe.
So who's the boss, Stephen Erlinger?
Markets are the boss. I mean, in effect, Mrs. Merkel has her own domestic problems. The treaty is there. Remember 1997 when Lionel Jospin came in as the socialist prime minister, and he was complaining about austerity then. And he said there's the Stability Pact, and it's not good enough. So lo and behold, it became a Stability and Growth Pact. And I suspect the same sort of thing will happen here. There'll be something added on to the fiscal treaty. But it's not going to change the fact that governments who have too much debt need to reduce their debt. And that's something the Germans aren't demanding it, the markets are demanding it.
Wolfgang Schäuble, the German finance minister, is talking about raising salaries.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk of growth now, but the problem is, what do they understand by growth? I mean, if Hollande talks about growth, at the end it will cost him a lot of money, and he needs to increase the debt. When Germany talks about growth, it might be a slightly different approach, and at the end they might find a compromise. But it's true that there are definitely signals coming from the German side that, yes, we are looking for a consensus, and from both Merkel and Hollande are both very good consensus seekers, so they will find a way.
Ulrike, there's talk about, by the way, because they are talking about who will be the next prime minister, without going too much into detail, but there's the party boss, Martine Aubry, and then the head of the socialist group in parliament, Jean-Marc Ayrault, who, as you've said, speaks German.
Yeah.
And he's got the inside track right now. Is that because he speaks German?
Well, it would be great for Germany if he became the prime minister, because it's always good to have someone with strong German connection in the government. Sarkozy had Wauquiez, Bruno Le Maire, so they need someone. If he's a prime minister, that would be great. If Aubry becomes prime minister, then it's a strong signal to the left, and that might give him some more scope of action on other fields. So. But obviously, Germany is very interested in who is.
What's
who
your
is
tip
there.
on this one, Patrick
My
Vignal?
money is on Ayrault for all the reasons we've been mentioning. Is that because the markets are watching, Europe is watching, and he will send out just the right signal.
So he'll go with Ayrault.
I don't know, but it's my bet, yeah.
There's one other factor too, which is Ayrault and Hollande are very close, very old friends, and he and Aubry detest one another. So who would you rather have as your prime minister?
And again, this brings us to another political insider story, because as we saw in that report in Bar 1, the first mentor, political mentor for François Hollande was Martine Aubry's father, Jacques Delors.
Jacques Delors, yes. And one name that's been omitted, actually, is Manuel Valls. That would be a bold choice and would send out a different signal, would send out a modernising signal. I think the choice of prime minister will point to whether we're talking about the Socialist Party or the Social Democratic Party. And of course, this is a debate that has never been concluded within the party. And it's something that Hollande is going to face. Once the dust has settled and the confetti's all cleared away, one of his problems is precisely going to come from inside his own party. Which tendency to privilege? And as you say, the choice of prime minister will be a big signal there.
All right, so he's managed the Socialist Party before, Patrick Vignal. Is he the kind of guy who can crack the whip and get everybody to stand in line, the way François Mitterrand did?
Not really, but he's probably not as soft as he appears to be. And I think he is respected within the party, and during the campaign, he showed that he can be tough when he needs to be.
Stephen Erlinger, when you sat down to interview him, did you have the sense that this was a guy in charge?
Yes, actually, I did. And someone who was trying very much to seem like the man in charge. I mean, the party is very divisive. He's not at the heart of the party. He's more to the right of the party. His best friends are actually his enemies. He won the party almost by default, won this nomination. He's carried them to victory. They owe him a lot. And he brought in Moscovici to run his campaign, who was actually a Strauss-Kahn supporter. He's managed, I think, very well to keep order in the party. Everyone wanted to win, but now they've won. Will he be able to maintain order? That's a different problem.
All right, we'll be watching for that going in. How you manage, what kind of a manager you are, that's a key. And of course, we do know he'll be different from his predecessor, Nicolas Sarkozy, who, by the way, delivered a gracious concession speech before party faithful in Paris on Sunday.
I bear all the responsibility for this defeat. I'll tell you why. I fought on the basis of values and responsibility, and I am not a man to shirk his own responsibility.
It's funny because even in that concession speech, a nod to his own hands-on kind of style that Nicolas Sarkozy had. And when you look ahead, of course, François Hollande has said on the campaign trail, what I won't be is Nicolas Sarkozy.
Yeah, right. He's very different in style, and maybe it's less interesting to watch him because Sarkozy was so... he's a very good, he can speak very well, and Hollande can be a little bit boring, but I think this is what the French wanted, and they got their normal president, so now they will get used to him.
Jim Shields, the French like boring when in their president?
Well, I think Sarkozy's end had something tragic about it, frankly. Just watching the last couple of weeks, he was like a drowning man to whom no one would throw a lifeline. I mean, 5 of the 10 candidates, 5 of the 8 who were eliminated, came out for Hollande, nobody for Sarkozy. And then the final nail really was Bayrou coming out for Hollande, which wasn't the natural choice. I mean, Bayrou's centre of gravity pulls him more towards Sarkozy than to Hollande. So that was really, I think, the end of Sarkozy.
Patrick Vignal, Hollande promises that he'll manage the presidency differently. People criticize the fact that there's too much power concentrated in the hands of one man. He says he's going to do things differently. But will that be the case?
It will probably be different because he has to rely on the Prime Minister. He will have a lot on his plate internationally, dealing with European affairs. And I think he needs a strong Prime Minister whom he can rely on, which was not Sarkozy's case at all.
So Sarkozy micromanaged.
Exactly, and he once dubbed his Prime Minister as a collaborator. It will be different this time. I think we will really have a Prime Minister in charge of domestic affairs, at least.
When you look as an American at French politics, we talk about the regalian aspects of the office. Again,
it's a very un-American word, by the way.
but in this case, constitutionally, he is all-powerful to a certain degree.
It's an extraordinary system. I mean, it was built for Charles de Gaulle, and of course, no one's been quite big enough to fill those shoes, though Mitterrand, I suppose, came close. And in a way, it's a little old-fashioned. And the French, what'd be interesting is Hollande describes his doing the job as setting the main lines of policy and not being involved in day-to-day matters. We'll see if the society lets him do that. I think that's his intention, which is, Sarkozy made a big mistake, one of his friends said, which was when he came to office, he thought he could be a normal person like Tony Blair, but he forgot that there was a queen in England, and there is no king of France. The king is the president. So people resented Sarkozy jogging up the steps of the Élysée. They thought he demeaned the office, which does have monarchical qualities. And he pulled it down too far, even in his language. So I think Hollande is very conscious of trying to keep, to be normal, to be nice, but to keep this kind of distance between himself and the day-to-day drudgery. We'll see if he succeeds in doing that.
All right, so different conceptions of what the office will be like and different partners within his coalition. We were talking before about he's got to deal with, on the one hand, the center, on the other hand, the far left, a narrow win. He's going to have to rein in those disparate forces. Like, for instance, his former partner, we were mentioning her in part one, Ségolène Royal, the socialist nominee for president 2007, tacked distinctly left when she took to the stage at Place de la Bastille on Sunday ahead of Hollande's speech.
So much happiness, so much emotion. French people can have confidence, which is to say that millions and millions of people voted for change, for a republic that's more at peace and more communal, and that does better. Our goal is to get to work right away so that the important decisions and the important reforms can be made to get France out of this crisis.
Jim Shields, that was Ségolène Royal at a strategy meeting at party headquarters that took place today after that speech she made on Sunday evening. And again, there's all these different forces again pulling in every direction.
Yes, but for the moment they're pulling in the same direction. I mean, you're right to say that under the surface they're pulling in every direction, and that will come through very quickly. And the construction of the government will be the first sort of stage in that, because those who get office will be happy with that. Those who don't will possibly react and resent it. So yes, the Socialist Party has always been a difficult beast to manage, and it will continue to be.
And of course, there is Ulrike Kollermann partnering with the far left, which garnered 11% of the vote, and which is anti-Europe to a large degree, and also trying to rein back in. Many Socialist Party leaders have said it. All those who voted in record numbers for the far right.
Yeah, I mean, in the first round, there were 30% of anti-establishment vote. And as we see, Le Pen, the votes for Le Pen, they don't go immediately, automatically to Sarkozy. So it's really anti-establishment. Then we have 6% of invalid ballots. That means that people did not vote for Hollande, but their vote was against Sarkozy. And this is something he has to deal with. All these votes he got, it's not necessarily a support for him, but there's a big share of people who just voted for him because there was no other choice.
Stephen Erlanger, is he going to be able to rein in those anti-establishment people?
Well, I think he will if he does well in the legislatives. I mean, when I talked with him, one of the points that he made was that everyone criticized Mitterrand before Mitterrand was elected, and they said he was archaic and he dressed badly and he didn't know anything. But he said the day he became president of France, he incarnated the nation. It changes you. So it's going to change François Hollande and change him in ways I don't think he understands, and ways which will be very hard to predict. But I think he's actually well prepared for the job. He knows his own party extremely well. It's all its foibles and weaknesses. I think he knows his economic problems. I think he is a pro-European figure who may work well with Merkel in creating a different form of European governance in Brussels. There's talk he may go speak to the European Parliament, which would be quite a new symbol too. So I think, yes, incremental, but very different in tone. And I think a bit different in substance, too.
Different in substance. We'll be, of course, watching up to the lead into that May 15th inauguration. I want to thank you, Stephen Erlanger. I want to thank Ulrike Kollermann, Patrick Vignal, and Jim Shields. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's Business with Matthew Warren.